ridiculous state of affairs, doesn't it? But thanks for that, Tricky. Some people say that the job that is done by some of these umbrella companies is very good. Others think that it is a bit of a rip-off. But you certainly, as Tricky says, seem to be forced into it, which can't be a good thing. Perhaps we'll explore that subject a little bit more on another show. Now, one of the other things I want to get into before the news at 5 o'clock is this remarkable statistic which came out just the other day from the Office of National Statistics, which says that in England and Wales in 2010, there were 119,589 divorces, and that's up nearly 5% from 2009. It's time the divorce rate has actually increased since 2003, and more than likely it could be the recession that is to blame. Lisa Pepper specialises in family and collaborative law, and she is an accredited resolution specialist. Here's her explanation of some of these statistics. Lisa, thank you very much indeed for joining us on TalkSport. Some figures released very recently from the Office for National Statistics show that divorce rates for most recent period last year have gone up for the first time in a while, and some people are speculating that it may have more to do with financial matters than anything else. What's your thought on it?
Yeah, well, the results have been quite a surprise, actually. They've gone up for the first time since 2003 to just under 5%. There was nearly 120,000 divorces in 2010 in England and Wales. And we do suspect that this has got something to do with the economic downturn. It's a big pressure on couples at the moment with job uncertainty, redundancies, the cost of living going up, a lot of house prices static or coming down, and it is a real flashpoint for couples and arguments over money.
I mean, up until this particular figure came out, what was the general thought about why the rates were going down for the previous few years?
Well, the rates have been going down because marriage has been going down. 1 in 6 adults under 50 now cohabit, which is an interesting statistic because in the 1960s it was 1 in 100. So there are more people cohabiting, there are more children born out of wedlock, and less marriage, less divorce.
So this figure is a sort of percentage of the population as opposed to a percentage of married couples then?
Yes, yeah.
Right, okay. Because we also hear very frequently that at least half of people who get married probably end up getting divorced. So there's quite a lot of people who end up getting divorced anyway, right?
Yeah, there is. The divorce rate in this country is nearly 50%.
And why do you think that is such a problem?
Why is it a problem? Gosh, where do I start? I mean, I think the reason that people divorce, the main reason is a breakdown in communication. And I think there are a lot more pressures now on people than years ago. A lot more women have got a lot more opportunity and have got incomes of their own and are career women, and that in itself can put pressure on a relationship. There's more stay-at-home dads now. There's all sorts of reasons why the society has changed, and perhaps marriage is more disposable than it was.
And I guess just the idea of getting divorced is not quite so big of a deal in a community and with your friends and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's no taboo anymore. I mean, I've known clients that have bought divorce cakes after they've got a divorce. Would you believe?
Yes, I've heard of that, and divorce cards and that kind of thing. I mean, one of the problems, I suppose, during a recession is that couples who perhaps have been married for a long time or even a relatively short time may have some property together. They may have a house or something that they need to sell in order to get divorced, and they can't do that because they can't actually sell the house, and that must create an awful lot of problems as well.
It does, and more and more poor couples are having to live together and in a very strained atmosphere, which is particularly bad for the children, I always think. And they've perhaps accepted, both of them, the relationship is at an end. But, as the saying goes, two people can live almost as cheaply as one. And if you're trying to buy 2 separate properties and run 2 separate properties, big enough for the children to stay at both homes, that is not easy, particularly if you're worried about, job security or you've lost your job. And also, for one party, if they've been a stay-at-home parent, how do they get a mortgage?
Exactly. And is that still a very, I mean, and particularly at the moment, in terms of trying to get a mortgage in any situation, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Would you like to see some kind of legislative move to make things easier for people in those situations who are trying to get divorced but are kind of trapped by the finances of it all?
I certainly think that the dilution and actually destruction of legal aid for people divorcing and needing help sorting out the finances and the children is a complete disaster for people on low incomes, because I just do not know where these poor people are going to go. And even if they neither of them need to set a foot in a courtroom, they're not milking the system, they're not going to cost the taxpayer thousands, they just need help sorting out the legal documents to get divorced and a little bit of advice. I do not know where these poor people are going to go.
Because they do find the whole legal process very baffling. I mean, you're involved in the resolution process, aren't you? Which was something that was set up some years ago, which has some levels of success, I suppose, in terms of making things at least palatable for both parties, if nothing more than that. But as you say, it's very, very difficult if you then have to go to a lawyer, because you have to go to a lawyer to work out where to go and how much money you're going to have to spend.
Yeah, and the tricky thing in a divorce is sorting out the finances, and if a couple have agreed a clean break, unless they get the legal documentation from the court drafted by the lawyers giving that clean break, or a maintenance figure or what that is, there's no certainty there. So people can just walk away from anything they've agreed then. It's like a contract. You need that contract, and in this country that's an order of the court, and you need a lawyer to help you get that.
And there isn't really anywhere for people who don't know about that process to find out about it, is there?
No, I mean, these documents are complicated legal drafting. They cite acts sometime from the 18th century. You can't do that. You need someone to help you through that process and get a document produced that is watertight, that you know is binding. So you've got your clean break. No one can come after your inheritance if it's due in a few years or whatever. You need that certainty. Okay.
And if anyone is thinking about getting divorced and they're listening to this, I mean, the resolution process is not compulsory, but obviously you would recommend it to people.
I certainly would recommend mediation or collaborative law, which I'm not going to go on about, but it is brilliant because that is two solicitors and their clients sitting round a table, signing an agreement that we are going to sort this out and we're not going to court. And if either party says, I'm not sticking to this, I'm going to court, the lawyers get sacked. And I guarantee that is a good process to strike out a deal.
That must be a very good process to strike out a deal, because, of course, there are an awful lot of lawyers in family law who make rather a lot of money by letting things go on and on and on, and people complain quite often that they could have had an agreement if it wasn't for the lawyers falling out with each other.
Yeah, I mean, certainly members of Resolution do not take that, and we take great pride in the fact that we help couples rather than milk end up taking the lion's share of what they're arguing about in legal fees. And
right.
People, we wouldn't get recommended if we did that. I think in this day and age, clients are a lot more savvy and they look at the bill and they say, what was this for, etc.
Okay. So could you tell people where they could go and look for sort of reputable legal representation that's not going to cost them a fortune and an arm and a leg if they are in that position? I mean, where can they go? If they're somewhere on the net they could go and have a look at? Yeah,
well, forgive me for the plug for my firm, but we're very reasonable. We're Osbornes.net. Also, the Resolution website is really good. They have a lot of fact sheets and information there. I've put some videos on YouTube, if people Google me, with some 10-minute videos on the simple facts about divorce procedure, the facts that you don't need to go to court, etc. So that's a good start.
OK. Well, Lisa, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to talk to us.
Lovely to speak to you. Thank you very much, Michael.
They have experienced glorious triumph. They've lived lives that transcend the ordinary.